Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Electric Coin Company live stream for Q1 2020. I hope you've got your coffee or your tea or your water, wherever you're at. We have a pretty full agenda that we're going to move through really fast, but I think you'll be really excited by all the stuff that is coming out. This is what it looks like. We got some feedback from the last one that it was just too long. So we're not going to try to do everything in this one. We're going to keep it to an hour. And we want to make sure that we have 20 minutes at the end to be able to answer questions that you might have. So to ask questions, please go to Slido, sli.do, and enter this event code, ECC Livestream. You'll be able to post questions. You'll be able to upvote questions. And at the end of the call, then we'll go through them and answer as many as we can with the time that we have. So with that, I'd like to introduce Zooko, our CEO, and he's going to take you through some of the stuff from 2019 and some of the stuff that we're looking forward to in 2020.
Hello, everybody. So like Josh says, we have limited time, and we want to tell you a lot about what our current work is that's coming out. But real quick, I want to point out a couple of highlights from last year.
So Zooko, I think we lost audio.
Oh, I'm back. What did you hear?
Yep. You said you were going to highlight a few things from last year, and then we lost you.
Okay, so there's a lot on here, and so hopefully you can look at the slides later and read all the details, and there's more on our website. But some of the big things we accomplished last year were sharing the trademark for Zcash and the Zcash logo under a novel legal agreement with the Zcash Foundation. I'll explain more later about what that means, but this is something we accomplished last year, which decentralizes control of the Zcash name while still allowing us to prevent people like scammers from using the Zcash name to trick people. Also last year, we announced, some of our team discovered a new scientific breakthrough, and we announced it. It's called Zcash Halo. You can hear more about that too. Something I want to point out, which wouldn't be really visible from announcements or news, but we once again spent a lot of the year engaging with regulators around the world, and this resulted in some positive developments, and I believe it resulted in fewer negative developments last year, thanks to us going on the road and educating and teaching regulators about the new technology so that they could make more informed and less fearful decisions. And something else we did, it's also not necessarily really visible, is that we supported a whole bunch of top quality partners in the industry to integrate Zcash into their products and services and deploy Zcash to their users. All right, moving right along, let's talk about what's coming next. So in this live stream, we're going to describe quite a few things at a rapid clip. And these are our focuses as the Electric Coin Company for 2020. The first one, in the sort of the most important one in the longer term, larger scheme of things, is supporting the increasing decentralization of the whole Zcash ecosystem. I'm going to go into that in detail myself in the next slide. But the other thing that we have as our priority for 2020 is continuing to innovate in the core protocol. I think it's really important. I think there's a major strategic differentiator between ossifying early versus ossifying late. And I think as a decentralized open protocol, it's really important that Zcash ossify just right. We're going to be the Goldilocks currency. And so in 2020, we're continuing to deploy innovative, risky, promising new technologies into the open network. The ones this is assuming that we get the right support from all of our partners. But I think we will because we've got some really good technologies in the pipeline. One is FlyClient, which is coming out soon. Stephen will describe that later. And another is transparent Zcash extensions. Stephen's going to describe that as well. Our third priority is more advanced research and development, which can be used in new innovations probably next year or the year after that, but it's further out in the pipeline, and that includes Zcash Halo that we mentioned earlier and scalable Zcash. It doesn't have a cool code name, it's just scalable Zcash, and it's just what it is. And Stephen's going to describe both of those later. The fourth priority for our company is supporting this decentralization process by decentralizing development in addition to funding and governance. So we're supporting new third parties. I'm going to describe on the next slide how that's now going to be funded thanks to the community's decision. We're supporting wallet makers to roll out shielded mobile wallets. And also we're going to be launching cross-chain interoperation between Zcash and other major blockchains this year. And then the fifth priority is what I call here communicating about freedom and privacy. And I mean something specific by that, like Zcash is in the right place in the right time because due to cybercrime and cyber war attacking our economies and attacking our democracies, people around the world, this is uppermost on their mind, is security and privacy on the internet. And we have already, as a community, as the Zcash movement and the Zcash community, we've already innovated on science and technology in a way that increases the options. It gives people new tools and gives societies new tools to protect themselves. And we've also engaged quite a lot, both as the Electric Coin Company and other parts of the Zcash community. We've engaged in the public discourse. Journalists, regulators, politicians, everyone on Twitter and Telegram, and we've advocated and educated people, and that's important too. But most of all, in 2020, we have this opportunity to reach people by letting them try it and use it themselves. I've seen this over and over again that words only go so far, especially in an era of fear and misinformation. But when you put something in someone's hands and they use it, not only do they really know and they really understand at that point, but also it's empowering. It's not fear. It's becoming part of something that is good for you and is also bigger than you. And so by bringing that experience to more and more people in 2020, that is our opportunity as the Zcash community to change world history by making more and more people feel like they understand this thing and it's something they can actually do and they don't have to be subject to fear. And we're going to talk about that too in Josh's and Elena's section. Okay, real quick, next slide. Zcash governance. So for the last year, more than a year ago, the Zcash community raised the question of what shall we do when the Founders Reward runs out and the money that's supporting Electric Coin Company and Zcash Foundation stops coming, which is scheduled to happen at the end of 2020. And there was this really long discussion. This slide you see here is, again, something, don't try to read it now, please, because you'll stop listening to me if you start reading. But this was a slide that was published by this analyst firm called Messari. And the major points I want to point out to you is the Zcash community started this discussion. During the process, we signed this trademark agreement so that ECC would no longer have unilateral control legally over what gets to be called Zcash. And then the community collectively decided, with a whole lot of conversation and different kinds of measurements and inputs from community sentiment, including the community advisory panel that the Zcash Foundation organized, and a whole lot of discussions on the community discussion groups, and some coin holders who posted anonymous petitions on the Zcash blockchain where they proved that they had collectively about $3 million worth of Zcash, and they gave their opinions about stuff. but they did so privately, so nobody can necessarily tell anything about them, which I think is awesome because I'm pretty sure that has never been possible before with a public computing infrastructure before now. So anyway, after this very long process, the trademark co-sharers, which is the Electric Coin Company and the Zcash Foundation, agreed on implementing the community's decisions. And we're going to go implement that in software and distribute the software on GitHub. And then at the end of this, well, before the end of this year, the community is going to be ratifying and activating these new consensus rules, so that in November of 2020, that's going to kick in. And at that point, there's going to be these new distributions of money. So go to the next slide, please. What the community came up with is that for the next 4 years, starting in November of 2020, 80% of the issuance is going to go to the proof of work miners. And then 8% is going to go to new third parties who start contributing to Zcash. And I think this is really interesting and awesome because this means millions and millions of dollars, which are disallowed from going to ECC or to Zcash Foundation. They can only go to new independent third parties who join the Zcash ecosystem and support Zcash effectively. And then 7% of the issuance goes to the ECC to fund all of the work that we're going to be describing today for the next 4 years, and 5% goes to the Zcash Foundation. And this is, like I kind of mentioned earlier, in the longer scheme of things over many years, and as Zcash scales up, this is the most important competitive advantage of Zcash because it's self-funding for the next 4 years while still being open and decentralized. And that self-funding is really critical because if you're not self-funding, then you're vulnerable to capture by whoever shows up to fill the funding gap. So this is fantastic. It was driven by, like I say, a bunch of random community members and our partners, the Zcash Foundation, and we tried to help too. But I'm really happy with the outcome, both the process and the outcome. Okay, that's the end of my story. Ask questions in Slido.
Thank you, Zuko. Just a couple notes. One, I had audio difficulties, so I had to move off of my earbuds. If there's any issues with my audio,
you sound good to me.
All right, let me know. And I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Josh Leihart. I head growth at ECC. But we also, I also want to introduce, let me come back over the slideshow, Stephen Smith. So I don't think the community has gotten a chance to meet Stephen yet, so you will today. So he came on since the last live stream and is heading our engineering, all of our engineering efforts. And so he is going to take you through an update on some of the stuff that Nathan went through with community last call, and outline that and some plans that we have moving forward. So Stephen, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. And as Josh mentioned, I'm the Director of Engineering at ECC. I joined the company in November, and really excited to be here, and honestly feel very fortunate to be able to participate in the next phase of growth for the Zcash ecosystem. The dev fund process was just incredible to watch from ground zero, and I feel really fortunate. So. Okay, next slide. Yeah. So as Josh mentioned, what I'm going to do today is cover a mid-horizon update to the flight plan that we first presented in the November live stream. And from an engineering perspective, we define 3 different horizons: a 0 to 6 month period, a 6 month to 2 year period, and a 2 year to 4 year period. And just a couple of notes on this before we get started. Like any product plan, the further out you go, the less well-defined your plans are, and the more likely they are to change. And also, while we're talking about periods as far out as 4 years, what we're going to talk about in terms of activities are just the ones we're doing for this quarter in support of those overall goals. So with that, we'll just jump right in and get started. First up is Fly Client support, as Zuko had mentioned earlier. And Fly Client does a couple of things for us primarily. One, it enables low power devices like mobile phones to participate in a blockchain to send and verify transactions. And it facilitates cross-chain interop protocols as well. Our activities this quarter in support of Fly Client is the implementation of ZIP 221 and conducting an external implementation audit on that. Next up is our shielded Coinbase implementation. If you don't know, Coinbase transaction is the first transaction in a block and contains the miner's reward. Currently in Zcash, Coinbase transactions can only contain transparent outputs, meaning they go to a transparent address. Shielded Coinbase eliminates that requirement and incentivizes miners to shield directly into the sapling pool. Activities this quarter in support of that include the implementation of ZIP 213 and an external implementation audit as well. Just on a side note, any feature like Fly Client or Shielded Coinbase that requires a consensus change, we do two types of audits. One is a specification audit, one's an implementation audit. We've already had the specification audits done, and you can find those actually posted on our website if you're interested in more information. Next up, viewing key RPC support. Viewing keys essentially allow users to disclose transaction information to third parties if they choose to do so. There are multiple use cases for the feature, but two of the main ones are regulatory and audit compliance. Our testnet in a box initiative. As Zuko mentioned, we're entering an era where there's going to be multiple protocol level development teams, and the testnet in a box initiative really facilitates testing by those teams by allowing anyone to spin up a multi-node testnet rather easily, kind of in a containerized fashion. And our goal is to deliver that feature this quarter. The value of that is a team can spin up a multi-node testnet. Other teams can join that testnet, assuming there's a degree of consensus compatibility, and kind of perform extended testing on these new features that we're trying to add in. Transparent Zcash extensions were formerly called whitelisted transparent programs. They primarily support Bolt and simplify extensibility of consensus rules for other use cases as well, like atomic swaps with other blockchains. We're doing a lot of work this quarter on shielded wallet SDKs for iOS and Android. We actually mentioned in the last live stream, we're developing an internal use wallet for both operating systems. And we've learned a lot about wallet UX in the process. You'll hear more about the work the team's doing in these efforts in just a few minutes from Bradley Miller. So Horizon 2, we move into the 6-month to 2-year timeframe, which as everyone knows, will be under a new government structure that was decided by the community with the recent dev fund activities. And one of the big goals this quarter is to translate that decision into consensus rules that we can implement in NU4. Zuko touched on Scalability 2021. We don't have a slick code name for it yet, but it's nonetheless a super important long-term initiative to transition to a new architecture with layer 1 horizontal scalability. The current focus of this effort is in the research and development phase around Halo right now, which you'll hear more about in a few moments from Sean Bo. And then also, Zuko mentioned, the next goal is to begin the transition to a community-driven development, which begins in earnest with the advent of major grants, which is that third slice of the dev fund in the post-NU4 era, basically. Activity this quarter includes reaching out to protocol teams involved in NU3 and NU4 to begin to craft a new network upgrade process. And then Horizon 3 covers the 2-year to 4-year timeframe with a focus, again, on layer 1 scalability and a closed loop with regard to the shielded lifecycle. The first activity listed here is the deployment of our Scalability 2021 initiative. By beginning work on this long-term initiative now, we ensure that we're ready to deploy well ahead of demand. The last thing you want to do with scalability is try to address it when it becomes a concern, especially given the complexities of networks and blockchains and things of that nature. We want users of Zcash to feel confident in the platform at both a consumer and business level. And again, our activity this quarter related to that is continued research on Halo. And then the last activity I'll speak on today is extended privacy across various bridging protocols. And again, we're looking in the 2 to 4 year range. But this introduces our shielded Zcash extensions, which is obviously a complement to transparent Zcash extensions. And this makes Zcash more valuable to things like DeFi applications and other blockchains who want to conduct interactions with Zcash in essentially a private channel. And I believe that was it for the R&D update. You'll hear again more from Brad Miller in a few minutes, and also Sean Buck.
Stephen, thank you. And what I hope people realize, like with all of these efforts as it relates to interoperability and all the extensibility that's being built onto the core protocol, and the fact that we have now a dev fund that will not only fund ECC and fund the foundation, but is going to fund, other developers millions and millions of dollars to be able to build on top of Zcash. Right, scaling and making sure that scaling works and that interoperability works is like really important, and that's our job in this whole thing. And then hopefully all of that funding will open up and unlock a lot more, new dev on top of the stuff that we're doing. With that, you guys, probably most of the community are aware of Halo, but you might not know. You might not know what it's doing or how it works. I screwed up the slides. Try to get that back. So we asked Sean Bowe, who was the discoverer with some help of Halo, to spend some time with you and describe it, both in terms of what it is and give you some updates on what's been done with it since we kind of made the initial announcement. So Sean, welcome.
Cool, thanks, Josh. So last year we announced Halo. It was part of our Scalability 2021 initiative where we're trying to address scalability issues. But Halo also allows us to address other scalability or other challenges as well. So here's 2 challenges in particular. As most people know, Zcash's on-chain privacy guarantees are the best in the industry. And the reason why is because our protocol, our shielded transactions are built on top of these very advanced zero-knowledge proofs. However, the really efficient protocols that we've deployed in Zcash require trusted setups. And unfortunately, trusted setups are just an inherent security risk. Although privacy is protected regardless, if the setup is compromised, it may be possible to create counterfeit Zcash. So here at the Electric Coin Company, we have a long history of pioneering trusted setups and performing them in a trustworthy way. So we use these multi-party computations to perform the setups that such that only one of the participants needs to be honest at the time in order for the setup to succeed. And obviously for the sapling network upgrade, we performed another one of these multi-party computations involving hundreds of participants around the world, which was at the time actually the largest multi-party computation ever performed. So unfortunately, this isn't good enough. Some people just don't care how trustworthy a setup seems to be, or just don't believe in them. Not only because computer security is hard, but also because for some people it's an ideological stance. And we often see competitors in our space, especially the privacy-focused projects, differentiating themselves by avoiding trusted setups, even if it requires them to use less advanced technology that puts their users' privacy at risk. So at the same time, you've heard some of this earlier from Stephen, we have scalability challenges in Zcash. Zcash needs to scale to be successful and to bring financial privacy to the masses. And if people hesitate to build on our platform because they think we're not taking scaling seriously, that's going to have huge negative impact on adoption. But also scaling research is really hard. And it's especially hard for us because we're not just trying to scale a distributed protocol, we're trying to scale privacy. So there are many projects in our industry that tackle one of these or the other, but nobody has really solved both problems. So this means that we need to begin this research today, not only to signal that we're taking scaling seriously, but also because scaling challenges can creep up on us. They creeped up on Bitcoin before we have a plan to adapt. So the Scalability 2021 initiative is about spearheading this research, building a prototype that shows that we can scale the very strong privacy that underlies Zcash. And our team has for years been on the forefront of advanced cryptography for protecting user privacy. So now it's time to apply some of those cryptographic chops to scalability as well. And one of the fundamental tools that we're going to use to do this is called recursive proof composition. So on the next slide, you'll see about 4 different figures here. The first figure is supposed to represent Bitcoin style cryptocurrencies, where every transaction that's posted to the network is collected into blocks and distributed to every node, and every full node needs to verify every transaction to verify the current state of the blockchain. And the second figure kind of shows what we do in Zcash, at least in the shielded portion of our protocol, where instead of posting the transaction necessarily, we post a proof that the transaction is correct. And the reason why we do this is, of course, for privacy reasons. We use these zero knowledge proofs so that the underlying transaction is hidden and these transactions are really just indistinguishable from each other. But these proofs are actually getting more and more efficient over time, and we can do even better than this. So we can create proofs that entire batches of transactions or blocks of transactions are correct. So in figure 3, you see a single proof that an entire batch of transactions is valid. And this batch of transactions doesn't need to be communicated or checked in any way. The single proof does all of the work. So in a way, this kind of continually compresses the work of checking transactions and checking the blockchain. And in figure 4, you see how we take this even further, where our proofs check previous proofs as well, so that the correctness of the blockchain is established by checking a single proof at any given time. This is, in the blockchain context, this is called a succinct blockchain, and it requires us to be able to recursively compose proofs. And back in 2014, some of the founding scientists of our company actually published a paper which showed recursive proof composition in practice for the first time. And for many years that followed, it was actually the only practical demonstration of it. But unfortunately, it requires a trusted setup. So on the next slide, you'll see that changed last year. In September, when our research team at the Electric Coin Company discovered Halo. So Halo is a bunch of different techniques that, when we combine them, allow us to achieve recursive zero-knowledge proofs without a trusted setup. And they're actually practical. They're small. The proofs are small. They're almost as small as the proofs that we use in Zcash today. And our scalability designs, the ones have been working on internally, they rely on these recursive proofs very heavily. So this was a really important discovery. And Halo is going to really play a part in that kind of work that we're going to be doing. So what's been happening since September? Well, we're working to get a better formalization of Halo written out to improve the paper, which you can actually read at the URL on the slide. And it's important to us for Halo to undergo extensive review from cryptographers so that we can be prepared to use it someday. And also it'll help us and other projects improve on its performance. So we're really excited about that. We're also developing a high performance implementation. We haven't posted it publicly yet, but we hope to do so as soon as we can. But the implementation so far does show practical efficiency. These proofs can be constructed and verified quickly on consumer hardware. So, and we actually have some benchmarks in the paper if you want to check that out. We also have some ideas of how to take Halo further, and there's a lot of active research in that area, so that's also quite exciting. It's also notable to mention that variants of Halo might actually end up in production in other projects in our industry as early as this year, purely because of the performance benefits of Halo. So even people who don't really care about relying on trusted setups, the efficiency is so good that they're taking our ideas and using them in their products. So so Halo is really an important component of our sort of tentative scalability designs, such as the one that my colleague Dara Hopwood talked about at ZCon 1. But there are other scalability concerns and challenges that I'm optimistic will make a lot of progress addressing this year and next year as part of the Scalability 2021 initiative. So thanks.
Sean, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us this morning. And then I'd like to now introduce Brad Miller. Some of you may know him, some of you may not. He's worn a number of different hats at ECC, and most recently took on leading our efforts to build the mobile SDK and the wallet that we have been, some of you may have seen on Twitter that we've been playing with. So with that, Brad, why don't you give us an update on what's happening with the wallet team?
Thanks, Josh. Hey, folks, I'm Brad Miller. I'm the product and engineering manager for our wallet team. As Josh mentioned, I've worn a bunch of different hats. This is the most recent one, and I'm really excited to share what we've been working on recently. So a quick update on some of the things we've released very recently that I'm sure some of you have seen on Twitter and some of our blog posts. In the middle of January, we unveiled our Android and iOS mainnet SDKs and our Light Wallet D server to support shielded transactions on mobile devices. This was a huge leap forward. This provided tools for developers anywhere in the world to pretty much bring shielded Zcash on most devices in people's pockets, which we were really, really excited about. And then at the same time, we committed to creating an internal test app, kind of as an alpha testing platform. It's really hard to create SDKs without actually taking them all the way to the limit of creating the apps that will be implementing them and testing them that way. At the same time that we released the SDK, we actually unveiled internally to ECC employees what we called a dog fooding wallet, a testing wallet for the SDKs that was fully compatible with Z2Z transactions on mainnet. So today, what I want to do is actually show you guys some of that wallet. And there's a big announcement that actually comes with this wallet too. Originally, we kind of slow played it and said this was going to be an internal wallet and that we weren't going to release this. Today, we're happy to announce that in the second quarter of this year, we're going to open source all of the code for mainnet wallets on Android and iOS. So what you see today is what we're currently testing in-house. Every ECC employee has this in their hands. It's making it more robust. It's making the SDKs better. And I just want to show off, honestly, some of the work that my team's done because I'm super proud of them. So some of the points, the things that we really wanted to stress. We knew it needed to be fast. We knew it needed to be beautiful. Yes, it was an internal test wallet, but we still wanted to make it something that could have hit production if we wanted it to. We needed it to be built with the exact same libraries as the open source SDKs. If we're building it with something that we're not providing to the community, we're not really satisfying our promise. We needed to make sure that we could make it compatible with a wide range of devices. You know, the world doesn't have the latest iPhone and the latest Pixel. The world has a lot of different devices in their pockets. So this SDK is compatible on Android down to Android API 21, so 5.0 Lollipop, with some hardware caveats depending on the hardware power of those devices. We wanted it to be shielded transactions first. There's a lot of T-address Zcash wallets on the market, which are phenomenal. The thing that we're trying to deliver and the real value that we're delivering is making sure shielded transactions are treated as a first-class citizen and are as convenient and easy to use as T-addresses. And we also wanted to take some design experiments and put them in people's hands. So we created an app that's very payment focused. and really focused on non-crypto users. So what I want to do is actually show you some of the screenshots from the actual app and walk you through some of the different workflows and actual user flows that we have in the app. We'd love to post a video clip of actually using the app. Unfortunately, on a live stream, it's really hard. So we'll follow this up in the next couple of weeks with some YouTube demos. So first off, onboarding on the wallet. It's extremely fast. It loads almost immediately. The app itself loads in well under a second. It's imperceptible. It uses BIP39 mnemonic phrase backup. So it's compatible industry-wide. It uses our Light Wallet D server, which is kind of the hero behind the scenes. We pioneered a new protocol to make this work on mobile devices that uses this Light Wallet D server to provide more compact blocks and transactions to where you're still preserving user privacy. But it also lets us do some other interesting things, like introducing checkpoints on the blockchain and wallet birthdays. So when you actually start up a brand new wallet, it's synced and ready to use in a matter of seconds. The design, like I said, is payments first. You know, we wanted to gear this toward first-time crypto users, and we took a lot of inspiration from widely used payment apps outside of the crypto space. And you'll see some of those design cues come through. And again, this is like a design experiment and study that we're really interested in seeing what people's reactions are. So walking through the send flow, we wanted to make it pretty intuitive. So we wanted to move people through what the process of sending shielded Zcash would look like. So, you know, we go through from this entry screen into your normal address screen where you then put the recipient address. You can see here we have full memo support on the send side. You know, this is one of the most unique features of Zcash. We're allowed and able to embed fully encrypted messages from user to user. It's extremely unique and it's a great feature. It allows us to do things as simple as including a return address or maybe including an invoice number. It really starts completing the loop for what transacting in shielded Zcash looks like. It's fast again. So we said that it loaded fast, it synced fast. It's also really fast at creating transactions. When Sapling activated in October of a little over a year ago, that's really what enabled this. But even to the point now, we're creating transactions on mobile devices in a little under 10 seconds. That's pretty incredible when you compare it to where we came from with Sprout, where it was taking upwards of 30 to 40 seconds on a desktop. And this design also gives us some great ways to really look at future features. Things like payment requests, things like address books. And also, you know, we're researching some payment methods that don't even use traditional addresses as they're currently thought of. And this payment flow really helps us experiment with those innovations. As with any app, there's also, you know, I showed you the two main functionalities, you know, actually backing up your keys, securing your funds, and also sending funds. There's also some other pieces that really need to be rounded out, like restoring your wallet. So this, again, using BIP39 mnemonics, you can restore your wallet, resync all your funds. We had some experiments with the actual address too, like chunking up the address to make it more legible, and also including some design cues like the shielded Z in the middle of the QR code to really provide context when you're sharing addresses and really help people that are on the receiving side understand what they're doing, and also providing context back to it being shielded Zcash. So, you know, I said at the beginning that we're open sourcing this code, and the natural follow on is, hey, why aren't you just launching the app? Frankly, we are the premier Zcash development organization on the planet. We're not necessarily a wallet company. We don't want to see a single wallet in the App Store. We want to see every wallet in the App Store have shielded Zcash. These libraries are satisfying the promise that we made, which is to enable and empower the development community and the user community with everything they need to have shielded Zcash in their pocket. But I need your help, right? To make this happen as a community member, I really need your help. So my challenge to you as a community member is if you really want to see shielded Zcash on the services you use, go ask for it. Send a message to the support team of every single exchange, wallet, custodian, merchant that you want to see shielded Zcash on, and tell them about these libraries that we've created. They're on GitHub today. You can go see them. The requests that you send to them, we hear about them. I hear about them every day when someone says, hey, I really want shielded Zcash. Your demand is what's really going to move the needle for these people. So with these tools that we've unveiled, we believe that we're ready to support those companies to integrate shielded Zcash. So what are some next steps for us? So the wallet we showed you here was Android. We're also currently working on an iOS sister app, which will be identical in functionality to the Android app. And we'll be working on that, unveiling that in the next couple of months. We're creating a resource portal for developers for comprehensive documentation for all these libraries, including API docs and developer guides. We're putting together a wallet developer group, which we're hoping to launch towards the end of March, which will be a limited group of people developing wallets and also just shielded Zcash products in general to help us get feedback on what we've built and also to provide support for them. Coming out of those meetings and also just general community feedback, we need to iterate on that feedback and really incorporate that into the product. And then, as I said, in Q2, we're going to open source the iOS and Android wallet code.
So thank you, Brad. Hopefully, I think that was your last slide, right? That's your last slide. Sorry.
It's close enough. In closing, I think that the future of shielded Zcash is really bright. And I'm very excited to be pushing that out to the community. And I just, I welcome feedback and input and collaboration from everyone in the community, all the way from the most sophisticated developer to just the newcomer. I think we've moved a long ways in a very short period of time. And I'm excited for what's next.
Thank you, Brad. Sorry for screwing up your flow, man. But really good. And so, again, what we're hoping is with all these tools and stuff that we're pushing out there, that developers are able to download the code, start to use it, integrate into their wallets, build the new wallet, right? So it will all be out there and available for you, the community, to use. And then, forthcoming again, we have this financing that's available to be able to help support that development. The other thing I just want to reinforce what Brad said about asking. And sometimes we can take kind of a passive position and think it's okay, it will come, or ECC is going to do all the work. But the reality is, when Andre, who runs our BD, and I are out meeting with exchanges and wallets, and we sit down, the question is always, what's this going to result in for us as an exchange or a wallet provider? So that while they might like to be ideologically aligned, it's really about the business and the users and what the users want. And there's a lot of competition for those resources at those places. But they continually say, we listen to our users, we listen to our users. So please follow Brad's lead and reach out to your wallet and your exchange providers. So we're going to jump from engineering efforts into adoption and demand, but we're not going to be able to hit everything because we just have about 15 minutes or so left for this section. But these are the key 5 areas for adoption and demand for growth that ECC is supporting. One is to increase shielded adoption, whether it's through these tools, the conversations that we're having with, again, exchanges and wallets and custody providers, is to make them aware and to help support them in whatever ways possible to bring shielded Zcash to their users. The second is to drive user demand. So kind of broad awareness of Zcash and what it is and how it works. And there's some efforts that we're working on that front. You're going to hear from Elena in a minute about building and nurturing a community. That became really a priority for us last year as we started to engage a little bit more actively in a broader community. Traditionally, we had done a great job of engaging cryptographers and scientists and engineers and folks in that sphere, but we hadn't reached out more broadly to the kind of a broader set of users. And so And one of the things that we need to be able to do that is to foster and nurture the community that surrounds Zcash, the folks that were already there and promoting it, as well as coming behind them to kind of give them tools and resources that they need. The fourth is to design and channel narratives, which I'll talk about here in a minute. And then 5, for us, it's really important that we continue transparency through things like these live streams, the transparency report, newsletters, and other things like that to make sure that you have real-time and up-to-date information. So first, we're going to talk about community and the various things we're doing to support the community. And I'd like to introduce Elena. Elena joined us in September, middle of September last year. Hopefully you've seen her on the forums. She's going by Elenita on the forums and kind of out there in the community sphere. Elena, are you on? You ready to take us through plans for?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. So Brad and Sean and Steve and Zuko, y'all are tough acts to follow, but I'm excited to share how we've been thinking about community programs at ECC. So I'd like to start with a quote. This is something that's kind of been the guiding vision for the type of programs we want to design in 2020. It's from author Bailey Richardson. She wrote a book called Get Together, and it's all about community building. So she writes, you need to build your community with people, not for or at them. And that's really the secret to making sure these efforts catch on instead of fizzling out. And it's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about since I started at ECC. So before thinking about what programs we want to put together, first, I was trying to think about what is the state of the community in Zcash in general. So I talked to quite a few people, not just employees at ECC and the foundation, but also people from throughout the ecosystem, like developers and end users, and also our meetup organizers throughout the world. What I found is that we actually have such a solid foundation to stand on. The Zcash community has 3 key aspects that make it just a wonderful place, a wonderful community to be a member of. The first is thoughtful debate and really engaged discussion. Nothing really showed that more clearly than the Dev Fund discussion of the past couple of months. This is really such a solid indicator of the healthy community that we have. Another thing that's working really well for us is that Zcash and ECC, we really have a solid reputation throughout the cryptocurrency industry. And this has led to us being able to form and leverage alliances to push forward strategic initiatives. So it's not just our Zcash community, but we can tap into communities throughout the ecosystem to realize our vision and our mission. And our mission leads me to the last thing that's really working well for us. In all of my conversations with people and everything I've observed on the forum, what is really loud and clear is everyone's commitment to privacy above all else. It's inspiring to work for a place and to be part of a community that has such a mission-driven focus. And you can see that in the industry-leading technology and research, such as Halo, like what Sean mentioned, and also the wallet resources that Brad was talking about. So not everything is perfect. There are ways where we can improve. And the one theme that everyone mentioned in the conversations that I had was that people really want more ways to get involved. They want more ways to get involved. And once people are onboarded into the ecosystem or into the Zcash community, they want a clearer idea of who's doing what and what they should be doing, whether they're a developer, contributor, or a moderator on our forums. So a lot of the programs that we put together have that focus in mind, more ways to get involved, and then clearer roles for what to do. So depending on the audience, and there are quite a few different types of audience in our community, there are different ways to engage them, right? You're not going to engage a institution the same way you engage an end user or a merchant or a developer. The one thing you should take away from this is that there's no silver bullet or no one size fits all strategy. At the growth team, we internally look at things into two main buckets. One is a business development focus and the other is a product marketing focus. So for business development, the main priority is to create a robust ecosystem with a universal expectation of financial privacy. What that means is that those priorities really end up looking like getting more people to have shielded support for their apps and products, improving liquidity and global distribution, and also generating demand for Zcash. On the product marketing, it's really similar. It's almost like a different side of the same coin. Product marketing is focused on developing meaningful relationships with diverse groups that care about privacy. So not just looking at it from a cryptocurrency space, but really looking at anybody whose work is devoted to privacy, whether that's advocacy, human rights, research. If people are working on privacy, we want Zcash to be top of mind for them. So that's what product marketing is focused on. And those priorities include understanding the end user, understanding what market forces drive adoption, and most importantly for me is creating feedback loops back to our engineering and product teams so that we're really incorporating what people are telling us throughout the community, what's important to them. That just echoes kind of what Brad was saying. If this is important for you, let us know and let the products and devices that you use know that, that you want to see more on Zcash. So for our 2020 strategy, we're centering a lot of effort, at least in Q1, around these main programs. I'll go through them one by one really quickly. So the first is Zeal Call. These are our monthly community calls. We thought Zeal was an appropriate name. That is the foundation mascot or the Zcash mascot. And these kicked off in January. They happen the last Tuesday of every month. And they're really meant to be kind of an open, informal, monthly touch point where community members can get together. The topics range from maybe meetup organizer support. Perhaps we can do a workshop if you're applying for a grant or a foundation grant. We've had guest speakers on, and then I hope to have the occasional technical AMA as part of these calls as well. Last month, which was the first month that we had it, we had Dr. Lawrence Capello. He's a privacy historian, and he gave us a lecture on the evolutions of privacy through American legal history. It was fascinating. Next week on Tuesday is February's Zeal Call, so make sure not to miss it. The next program I want to share with you is actually spearheaded by my colleague Andre in business development, and it's Pretty Good Pancakes, or PGP. This is a curated off-the-record event series where we bring together key partners in the ecosystem to just have a candid conversation about what are the challenges and what are the opportunities for developing the type of privacy-preserving technology that we're working on. We're really excited about what's come out of these conversations, and it's a different way of building community, kind of in a more intimate setting where people feel like they can be a little bit more honest and share their experiences around a privacy-centered business and advancing these narratives at large. The next priority, or the next program that we have, Zuko mentioned it at the top of the live stream. It really is focusing on widening the developer ecosystem, particularly as we prepare for that exciting major grants fund and the continued decentralization of Zcash. In Q2, we hope to announce a more formal developer engagement program to advance that objective, but just know that we've been laying a lot of the groundwork for it here in Q1. As far as weekly updates go, you may have noticed that the weekly forum updates include more content, such as This Week in Privacy and community shoutouts. These are important just so that people kind of see what's going on outside of our echo chamber, outside of our ecosystem, but also to shine a light and celebrate the people outside of ECC and the foundation who put in so much work and do so much effort to advance the Zcash project. And you might think, oh, wow, the forum, like these updates, they don't go very far, but it couldn't be further from the truth. We actually take the content from the weekly forum posts and we share it through different channels, such as the Proof of Work newsletter. And we also have another example is the Blockfolio page. A lot of people don't realize we have over 250,000 followers on that page. And every time we post something, there's over 10,000 impressions. So that might just sound like numbers for you all, but if you're marketers, those are great numbers. And it just shows that we have a lot of people interested in the work we're doing. Oh, and sorry, last but not least, my bad, Josh. The Freedom Tech Fellowship, this one is also a really good one. So the Freedom Tech Fellowship focuses on empowering community leaders who want to engage in crypto. In the past, we have worked with people like Carlos Acevedo in the Crypto Community Project in South Bronx. We've partnered with Open Money Initiative to do research in Venezuela. And we've also partnered with people like Mo Gishem in Turkey, who's run 2 workshops for Syrian refugees at the border. This year, we're bringing together even more partners to engage in this project. And what's particularly inspiring about this project is that this is organic activity. These are community leaders who are doing these efforts on their own, and we are reaching out to them and trying to find ways to lift them up and amplify their work. Now we can move to the next slide. So the ideas that I just talked to you about, those are projects that we have underway, but we are always brainstorming creative ideas and new ideas for the future. These are just a handful of them. I'll go through them really quickly. We hear you loud and clear. We know a lot of people have mentioned on the forum that merchant engagement is interesting and important to them. We want to get more developers working on our libraries. So we're looking forward to doing some sort of shielded hackathon in the next couple of quarters. And I'm particularly setting as a personal goal for myself to put together an organizer toolkit. So no matter where you are in the world, if you're interested in Zcash and you want to host an event or a meetup, you should be able to find all the resources in one place online. All right, so I'm following Brad's example and doing a challenge of my own. This is just the beginning, and my kind of call to action or my ask is I really invite and encourage everyone participating to join the conversation and speak up. There are so many places where you can join and be part of the Zcash community. On the forum, I'd like to just give a nod to Dara, Sean, and Sonia. They do a tremendous job moderating those discussions. In Telegram, a shout out to Sir Hodl, Zero Knowledge, Fierce UK, TM3K, and Pete for being the admins of that group. And then the brand new, fresh out of the oven Discord channel that we have, started also by Sean. If these forums aren't to your liking, we're also on GitHub, Twitter, and there are meetups all around the world. So I just encourage you to speak up and share any ideas you have for how you want to be more involved and what we can be doing to grow the Zcash community.
All right, thank you. Awesome. So again, like community is super important, and we're trying to meet people where they're at. And Elena and Andre are working really hard to put these great programs together, and hopefully there's a place for you to engage. The other thing I want to talk about real quick, but we're going to do it real quick because we're right at the top of the hour, is narratives. And Zuko alluded to this at the outset as it relates to the message and the time and place that we live in, where the narratives are around privacy are complex because they involve things like national security and the safety of people. And they're some places controversial. And it's really important that we have a voice in the conversation and that we're able to articulate stories and things that people can hold on to and use and communicate. So this is kind of an initiative that we're working on. And the intent of this is to create a universal expectation of financial privacy. Not that financial privacy is an exception, but that it's an expectation, that somebody doesn't have the mental load of having to make a decision every time as to whether or not they're safe making a certain transaction, but that they have an expectation of that. So some of the things that we're working on is, one, to form a common lexicon and narratives. It's important that we have a common set of words that we can use and repeat to build crypto awareness and an expectation of privacy within the crypto community, but also to create a broader public identity and engage in the broader conversation around the importance of privacy and of data privacy. We look at it across these three pillars, across demand, adoption, and protection. And demand is really the users demanding to have privacy. It's you reaching out to your exchange and asking them to support shielded Zcash. The holders, the daily users, and working to create messages and stories and getting those out to those people that they can understand and share. For adoption, it's exchanges and wallets and custody providers and those folks that we've talked about. And then on protection, it's a lot of the regulation, the stuff that Jack Avigan from our team works on and is leading. And so we're working across all of these things because they're all interconnected and they all play off one another, and they're all really important. We can't have demand without adoption. We can't have adoption without some protection and regulatory clarity. And these things all flow. So to the extent that we can create messages and lexicon and things for one place, it's important that we have all of these various channels and we're able to flow these messages and this lexicon and these stories out to all of these places. And so that for us is a huge part of like community as well, and equipping the community to be able to take that out. For lexicon, we've kind of settled on these 4 words, things that are important when thinking about privacy, because privacy is freedom, privacy is dignity, privacy is security, and privacy is consent. And we also look at the counter. What is the friction? What is the evil to the good? And the evil to the good, the evil to freedom is tyranny. Of dignity is disrespect, of security is danger, and of consent is coercion. And we take those words and those themes and we've started to weave them in. So some of the things that we're developing as far as these narratives, we're developing, and some of these things we want to continue to elevate because others are also creating these narratives and rolling these things out. Whether it's Jim Baker, who has this great paper about supporting encryption being a national security imperative, and the challenges and the trade-offs to consider, or Coin Center talking about financial privacy being necessary for the creation of electronic cash. So I'll give you an example of a few things. So one is this Privacy Is series that we've started working on. These are a series of postcards. We initially rolled these out at one of the PGP breakfasts for all of the attendees. When they sat down, there was this card and there was some questions on the backside of the card, but you'll see some of these words and some of these messages start to roll through other things. So I want to read a couple because I think our team did a great job of articulating some of this stuff. So for freedom, privacy gives you the ability to express yourself, to be creative, to spend your time and your money in whatever manner you like without the scrutiny of others. It protects our intimate moments, our most embarrassing ambitions, our radical ideas, and the ability to be our true selves. Privacy is freedom. Privacy is dignity. A person should be valued and respected because they are a person, not because of their age or ability or the power they hold, their gender or their ethnicity, or their usefulness to your own ambitions. Privacy is an instrument for unity and equality. Privacy is dignity. Security. Privacy keeps you safe from the people and corporations and even governments who will put your information at risk or use it to coerce you, surveil you, censor you, steal from you, or target your family and friends. Privacy is security. And finally, privacy is consent. Privacy is not about shutting out everyone and everything. Instead, privacy gives you the power to choose what and with whom you'll share. It provides safety and control and the right to grant access. privacy is consent. And you may have seen some of these themes out there already. Elena wrote a great paper around consent that she released out there last week. Zuko's been talking about some of this stuff on Twitter, and you'll continue to see these themes. We're also doing things like stickers, working on things that can be used within social media. By the way, these are stickers that got handed out to 2,000 participants at ETH Denver last week. If you want these 4 stickers, DM me and I'll make sure that you get some. We'll load you up. We're also playing with some other kind of ideas around posters and themes, and again, some other things that we can share on social media. This is one of them that I love, this theme that shower curtains are for criminals. And no, shower curtains are for anyone who wants privacy while showering, right? We're trying to take away this idea that privacy is just is useful for nefarious purposes, and instead say, no, I mean, we should have an expectation of privacy. And that just makes sense. Like, how do we connect with people in a way that just makes sense without, trying to sound too flowery or heavy-handed? Just another quick example of one that we rolled out. So we have been playing with this idea for a long time. Zuko's been talking about it for a long time. Is that that Zcash is the HTTPS to blockchains. One of the things that you might have seen is that we posted this paper on Nakamoto.com earlier to kind of reinforce this message. And what's powerful about this is not that we just posted this one paper with this narrative. It goes back to flow and to channels. So we've had various conversations with different thought leaders in the space. And we've talked about this concept of HTTPS on a blockchain. And this was a post from Brian Armstrong at Coinbase on the future. And it doesn't talk about Zcash, but it doesn't matter in this case. He picked up this narrative around finding the HTTPS on, privacy being necessary for financial freedom, and finding the HTTPS for blockchains. And he posted this here, and he's serving to illuminate and educate his audience on the importance of financial privacy. It comes back to the core narrative that we're trying to get out there. And then Brian Brooks, who's the chief legal officer at Coinbase, did the same. This was an op-ed that he had out there in Forbes. So this is a set of things that we're doing related to privacy. I won't go through all of these bullet points. I'm happy to get this out there in another form later for the sake of time. But it's jam-packed in terms of what we're building and what we're trying to move forward with. So thank you for listening to what we've been working on and the plans. I know we have a bunch of questions in the queue, and so I'm going to pull up my question box here, and some members of the team are going to answer them. So the first question is for Brad. Brad, what is the status of iOS and Android native libraries that can be used for integrating shielded transactions in apps?
Great. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that the presentation probably satisfied some of this question, but let me provide a little bit more detail. So the current state is iOS and Android SDKs are fully functional on mainnet with Z2Z sapling compatibility. And we're continuing to iterate and add new functions and features, specifically looking at full memo support and T-address support. And we're expecting to roll those out here in the next month or two. I think for a lot of detail, it would actually be more effective if I share out a lot of links into the follow-up forum post to the GitHub repos, and then maybe we can branch that out into a separate forum post that we can answer a lot of wallet-specific questions, because I have a feeling like there'll be quite a few. So maybe we leave it there, and then ask people to really follow up on the forum for a lot of details they can read at their own pace and leisure.
Cool, thank you. Second question, has there been a performance and stability review of the chain since the block time change? What are the findings? DC is going to answer this. And if you're not familiar with DC, DC is the COO of ECC. DC, are you on?
Hey, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. So as you know, the Blossom network upgrade changed the block time, reduced the block time, making the confirmation time faster. With any change to consensus, we spend a lot of time doing code review and testing. And then after this upgrade activated, we spent time looking at the network to see if there was anomalous behavior or signs that it wasn't working as expected. And what we've seen is that the block time seems to be stable at the right target, which is about 75 seconds. And also that the hash rate has continued to increase over time. But these types of things are things that keep me up at night. They're things that keep our director of security up at night, and I think a lot of other folks in the community as well. And we've had a longstanding desire and intention to build what we call a network observatory to basically keep an eye on the health of the network from a variety of positions and report on that to the community in real time. So it's my understanding that a member of the community has submitted a grant application to build just this, a network observatory for Zcash. So I look forward to the Zcash Foundation reviewing that grant application and that team getting approval to get started on delivering this.
Cool, thank you. I think we've got a queue of them in here for you. So
great.
Gonna stay on. So
I'm here all morning.
Is ECC or the Zcash Foundation hiring?
Yes,
So
yes, we are hiring. So right now the ECC is looking for a core or a software engineer to join our core team alongside Sean and Strad and Dara. So please take a look at the job posting. It's at electriccoin.co/jobs. I don't know if the foundation is hiring, but I believe that they probably are, given that the funding allocation for them that's just been approved under the new dev fund rules represents a significantly higher level of funding than what they had previously. So I encourage you to reach out to the Zcash Foundation directly, Twitter, Discord, email, whatever works for you, to see what their plans are for the rest of this year and into next year.
So that one was kind of a softball question. The next one, maybe not so much of a softball question. Why is the Zcash Dev Fund a competitive advantage when other chains like Decred or Dash already had this?
Great. So I'm not going to talk about Dash, but I will talk about Decred because I think that something that stands out as I look out across the ecosystem, I think about Bitcoin and its governance model. I think about Zcash and its governance model and how different it is from the governance model of Bitcoin. And then I look at Decred and I say, wow, that's quite a bit different than what the Zcash model is. And I think each of these models have strengths and weaknesses. And with the Decred team in particular, I do know that they're in the process right now of making their treasury more decentralized, that's a good move. But I do have concern that the entire system of on-chain governance that they built there may represent a higher risk of capture by adversaries or ineffective parties, simply because that on-chain governance mechanism is new, it's novel, it's an experiment. The recently approved Zcash Dev Fund is for the 4 years following the first halving, which is going to happen here at the end of this year. And what's really exciting about this Dev Fund is that it provides material funding for multiple parties to move the project forward. And notably, this new fund creates a slice for what's called major grants. And what's exciting about this is that the major grant slice is actually the biggest slice of the Dev Fund pie. And this is going to go to basically independent developers that are going to commit resources to improving and innovating around Zcash. So I've been paying particular attention to how the funding model has played out in the Ethereum community, and that's been evolving over time. And it was with particular interest that I saw Vitalik and Glenn Weil collaborate on a CLR project, an experiment with quadratic funding that they did with Gitcoin. And the results of those collaborations have been really exciting and inspiring. So for those of you that don't know about CLR, look it up, CLR Ethereum. It's a model that is unlike anything that's been tried before, and the results that's been providing to the Ethereum community are really meaningful. Ultimately, what I want to see in terms of how this dev fund plays out is more people getting compensated to contribute meaningfully to the Zcash ecosystem, and trying new things to see how those funds can be distributed the most with the greatest efficiency and most effectively. So in summary, I'm really bullish on the Decred model. I think it's fantastic. I'm also really bullish on the Zcash model. These governance models, they continue to evolve, and only time will show us the relative strengths and weaknesses of each of these models.
Cool. So I'm going to combine the fifth and the sixth question, DC. So I'll just ask it together. How will the new grant program be the same or different than the existing grants? And then part two of that is how can people or teams apply for those grants?
Sure. So the Zcash Foundation has been operating a grant program for some time. And you can apply to that right now by going to grants.zfnd.org. And that process is, as I mentioned, it's already up and running. It's been allocating funds, and it has generated a lot of really good results. So I'm super excited about that. That's different from this new slice of the Dev Fund that's been called Major Grants. And as I mentioned, this new slice, it's going to go live at the point of the halvening, or the next network upgrade, November of this year. And that represents 8,750 ZEC per month, which as of last week was something like $525,000 US per month to support third parties that want to contribute to Zcash development. So that's big. The process of governance for those funds is still being figured out, but the Major Grants Review Committee, which has been proposed by the community, it will be independent from the Zcash Foundation. So this provides another layer of decentralization, which I think overall makes the project stronger.
Cool. Thank you. You're done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh.
So we have one more question, and then we'll please take the rest of the questions to the forum. If you have additional questions, feel free to post them there, and then we'll make sure that we get all those answered. So this last one is for you, Sean. There were many zero-knowledge proving developments at the end of last year. How does Halo compare? And do others without trusted setups that support recursion? I guess, are there others that support recursion without trusted setups?
Yeah, so last year was really exciting for zero-knowledge proofs, and there were a ton of different developments. Actually, Halo builds on some of these. But last year, and since there have been only really two proposed protocols that actually have recursion as their goal, or they can actually show recursion in practice, and that's Halo and another paper that came out, I think, in late September, if I remember correctly, named Fractal. And Halo and Fractal are trying to tackle the same thing, but in slightly different ways. Halo's proofs are much smaller, so I think that's the direction that we're going to potentially be going on. But in any case, I'm sure that we're going to use whatever the best technology that's available to us. And so I think Halo is going to improve over time. I think Fractal will improve over time. So these kinds of approaches. So it really is, it's really just a matter of time to see what the best option is. But for now, we're going to be focusing on Halo because of the much smaller proof sizes.
Cool, thank you. So again, thank you so much for joining us on the live stream. If you have like other suggestions for the live streams and moving forward, or other things that you would like to see or dig into a little bit more deeply, please provide that feedback on the forum as well. That would be really helpful for us. Thank you so much for spending your hour and a half with us today. Wish you well, and goodbye. We'll see you next time.